So we're up and running. We may have a sound delay with my lips, so try to ignore it if that's the case. We rebooted and tried to see if that helped, and we couldn't tell. It didn't seem to help, but every so often that's what happens. Technical glitches. So I hope you guys all had a wonderful Ostara yesterday. I did find the book that I got the majority of the ritual I shared with you guys last week. So I brought it with me so I could show it to everybody and let you know where it came from. And the bulk of the ritual was from this ritual, but then the part where we were doing what I consider the real magical part of the ritual was different. The seed and everything, that was all me. So that's the way that works. I find things I like and then I do that. So I see a couple people have shown up here. And our weather today is cloudy but with some sunshine coming through. So that's nice. So we have like a a little bit of a break from the rain. We had some hail yesterday, which was quite fun. So now someone else has joined us. Yay. So let's see. So the book that I used for the majority of that ritual is called Magical Rites from the Crystal Web or Crystal Well by Ed Fitch.
That was always one of my favorites for little things like that.
Yeah, I think he's actually got two of these versions. That there's a second book, and this one is the first book. Guess I have to raise it up higher so I can cover my face. And it's shining on there. But anyway, you know, it's Ed Fitch is the guy. And it was their Ostara ritual that I liked I liked all the poetry and the invocation calls for the elements and that kind of thing. So hi Ryder, nice to see you. Yeah, so that was the book. And, you know, when I can think of it, people have asked me to do a video on all the different books I would recommend, but we have like two bookcases in here. I have my bookcase, Ian has his bookcase in the house, and then we have a third bookcase where we have other books. So we have a lot of books over the years that we've done. Anywho, so there we go. The last of her kind says hello. Hello. I had an interesting little thing I saw on one of the groups that I'm in on Facebook just this morning, actually. Someone saw an air dragon in the sky and was curious if anyone else had ever seen anything like it, because he doesn't usually see clouds as things other than clouds. And he put up a picture of a blue dragon with wings, and so I answered and said, you know, about the experience that I had with the large air dragon I saw from an airplane riding in the jet stream, and that it didn't have wings. And then he responded and said, well, it didn't have wings either, but I couldn't find a picture of what I saw. So my recommendation for that was basically to be respectful and be honored, and usually those kinds of spirits don't have something to tell us in particular, but you never know. So that was just sort of interesting. Personal library, yes. And Tia says, happy Sunday and happy spring. Thank you very much. It is a nice and happy spring. I am so glad that the change has happened. I'm having a hard time adapting to the time zone change this year. So it was annoying because I'm really good with my rhythms to, you know, keep them stable. And so a whole hour change has been difficult for my body to adapt to, but I think I'm getting there. Taylor says, hello. Hello, Taylor. So how are you guys all doing? Did you have a nice Ostara? Were you able to celebrate with other people? Or did you do something small just yourself? I did cook that giant turkey. It was a 20-pound turkey. I didn't realize how big it was until I took it out of the freezer after our last show. So we have a lot of leftovers we're going to be having to do things with for the next week. So we're covered. But
in a good way, though.
In a good way, yes. Taylor says, very nice. A cool bug landed on me. Ooh, well, I'm so happy for you. It was a good bug, a cool bug, excuse me. Ian's not fond of bugs. He doesn't like them. They freak him out a little bit.
It's not a mental thing at all.
And I'm okay with bugs, but I don't like most of them when they land on me unless they're like a butterfly. I'm okay with them. One of those things. Ryder says, I've been on a 3-day fast. Last day today. Can eat tomorrow. Had a lovely experience yesterday where I did a cacao ceremony and had a gong bath. Fascinating. And fasting is certainly one of the ways to help get you in the right frame of mind for having an altered reality experience, changing your state of mind and your state of consciousness. Trinity T says, hi, Siofra. Hi, chat. Hi. Taylor says it was black and yellow flying beetle thing. Okay. Yeah. Well, certainly some insects have some very important mythological things, like the dung beetle, the scarab beetle in Egypt mythology was very important to them. Ryder says, hi, Trinity. So, I brought one of my Goodwill finds that I got that I didn't paint. This guy was already like this, so see if he'll show up very well. This is a little carved Ganesha, and he was just so sweet. So this guy likes to sit by my on my nightstand next to me when I'm going to bed at night. Every so often he gets on the bed and sleeps with me there as well. But isn't he adorable? He's just such a cute little guy. I like rubbing his belly. I'm not sure if he likes me rubbing his belly, but I like rubbing his belly. So Tia says, I actually just finished a moon bath to celebrate spring. I love moon baths. They're so much fun. Mindy says, hi, Siofra and everyone. You just made my day better. Well, good. It's always nice to make someone's day better. We like that. We like making people's days better. So, they're fun. And Violet says, hi, Siofra. Oh, you must have got your alarm set. And did you finish all the stuff you needed to do last week in your house? So, somebody just sent me a message through Facebook. Let me close that. Ryder says, yes, I'm feeling an altered reality. Hi, Mindy. Yes. Getting used to those altered states is one of the tricky things because they can be very disorienting, especially in the beginning when you're starting to explore different states of consciousness. A lot of times people feel extremely dizzy and kind of like off for a while. Violet says, I'm still working on it endlessly. It's a joy, though. Good. There's always things for us to work on. Physical reality takes a lot of attention to detail when it comes to things like roofs and rain and whatnot.
Yeah, well, you can't ignore it. That's the thing.
Yes, they make you have to pay attention to it whether you want to or not. Mindy says, hi, Ryder. I agree. Things feel altered somehow. Hard to navigate at times. Well, take a special care for your health during this first week of spring, especially, because that's when your body is going through the process of adapting to the change of the energy that's around, the change of the light. Okay. Ian is trying hard not to sneeze loudly. I noticed, boy, when we were at the ashram up in Portland and we were participating in the open-eyed meditation, which went on for like an hour and a half or something like that.
Close to 2, I think.
It was the longest they'd ever done. and Ian had to suppress a sneeze because he didn't want to interrupt anybody. And yeah, we thought his body was going to explode. It was a lot of energy to repress.
But I'm gonna have to go take an antihistamine.
Okay, Ian's going to go take an antihistamine. I think I took one recently, so I should be okay. Cindy says, or yeah, my horses seem to be super sensitive to the energy as of late. Well, this is when they get very excited because they know things are coming, and of course bodies are changing and breeding season is coming up and that kind of stuff. So, you know, it triggers all these shifts and stuff in their bodies. And I think it was around this time of year actually that I had the experience with the horse. I was with a boyfriend down north of San Francisco, and there was still a little bit of like snowish kind of stuff on the ground, just a touch, and the horse that was under the tree was getting extremely excited, and I could feel it and sense it, and it like rolled on the ground and kicked its feet up in the air and ran around and jumped and broke its lead and ran away. So that was sort of interesting to see. Ryder says, I love horses, used to be a stable handler. Frankie Gore says, Blessed spring, Siofra. I asked you last week about keeping energies out of the apartment space. I found 4 65-cent little hand mirrors from Goodwill a few days ago, and so far it's working fantastic. Awesome. Always good to know when something works. I know that that has worked for me in the past, and great score because, you know, 65 cents practically free, right? So that's a good thing, because the more of an empath you are and the more sensitive you become to energies and the more you open up, the more those kinds of preemptive protections are important in order to keep your energy in and other people's energy out. It makes it a lot less confusing. Gnomes is here, says hello. Hello, Gnomes. Taylor W says, just wanted to say you look very pretty. I like your clothes. Thank you. I wanted something a little bright today. It sort of went with golden yellow for sunshine coming back. And, you know, Ryder says, thanks, Frankie. I've been thinking about doing the same. Yeah, that's with the mirrors. Frankie says, thank you so much for the help. You're welcome. And Ryder says, hello, Gnomes. So I just wanted to let you guys know, in case I hadn't mentioned this before, I think I might have in passing, I have a very literal brain. I hear things in literal ways, which is one of the reasons why sometimes I don't pick up on the nuances of what you're trying to ask me. So the more detailed or clear about it you can be, the better I'll be able to actually assist. Just to let you know, that is the weirdness of my brain that I have to deal with. Different necklace, Ryder says, looks pretty, looks like a kind of snake from here. Well, this is actually a amethyst wrapped with a phoenix. The phoenix firebird has been one of my personal symbols for a long time. In fact, for a while I went by Lady Phoenix, and because of the life that I've had and all of the different transformations I've gone through, I really resonate with the whole notion of, you know, being utterly destroyed and then rebuilding myself out of the ashes. So, and this is one of the first things I bought myself. I actually bought this in the 80s in Santa Cruz. When I saw it, it just was like, yeah, I can get that, and I can buy something for myself. So I was pretty excited about it. Cassie says, hello, Siofra. What are your opinions on hexing people that have actively hurt you? There is a dude in my class who goes out of his way to be hurtful towards me and the LGBT community. Well, that's always a difficult question to ask, because that's one of those personal ethics issues that you have to decide for yourself, whether it's a dangerous enough activity that you think that it rises to the level of needing to protect yourself and the rest of your community. I mean, you know, whatever we do, both positive and negative, is going to have an impact on us, whether we believe in the rule of 3 or karma or any of the other stuff. just as basic physics where energy goes out and transforms something and then different energy comes in. So, you know, I often, when those situations arise, sort of lean towards the notion of making the truth apparent to the person, like make them, I don't know, fall in love with someone who's a member of the LGBTQ community and then have to face their own prejudices. I don't know. But you know, it's a entirely up to you kind of choice. You have to decide what works. If you can find real life ways to confront it and, you know, let the people in charge know that there is a situation that is in the school where you are, that you're being harassed and people who are members of your community are being harassed, and take it up the chain, you know, tell the teacher, tell the principal or the vice principal or the dean, depending on, you know, where you are in schooling. And if that doesn't work, you could maybe even report it to the police as a form of harassment.
You know what I'd say? As long if you take some action with recourse to self-defense, that type of thing, if you don't feel any malice toward the individual or any bad feelings, you're just doing it to stop the problem, but any negative thoughts that get sent out, like you're an asshole or anything like that, that gets sent along with it, will ultimately result in some form of karma for the person doing the act. It's much better if you need to do a self-defense, if it's not, if you're not personally, emotionally involved with it, if you can do that and stay objective, which is difficult, of course.
And of course, sending the energy directly back to the person on both a mental and a magical level, not responding to it. I took a class from a woman who was was a student of a female Swami who was in Canada at the time. And one of the things that she talked about that resonated with me was the fact that when someone hurls something, especially a charge, something, whatever it might be, it's like a hook. It's like a fish hook. They're out there and they're looking for something that they can grab onto in order to get a reaction and get this tug of war going back and forth, pulling back and forth. And, you know, each throwing of a hook results in another hook coming in, and it sort of keeps the ball rolling. And if you can find a way to not care about what this person is saying, I know that can be quite a chore, but at least, you know in your heart and in your spirit that there's nothing wrong with you, and that this person is so incredibly insecure and moronic, in my opinion, that they have to live with themselves, and that's kind of a punishment in itself. And but that's it. You know, it takes practice. It doesn't happen all at once. You're not always successful. There's nothing wrong with not being able to do that either, because the only way society at large changes is if we confront prejudice and racism and all sorts of other forms of hate speech, I guess would be a term to use. And, you know, letting them know it's not okay, and continuing every time they say something, and get together with the other members of your community and talk about it as an issue from a social point of view. Even if they're not into doing magic like you are, you can still get together with them and talk about the issue and see what ideas they might come up with. So then you're not in this on your own. I think it's better with the group energy can assist with something like this. And it definitely needs to be dealt with. So those are just some notions out there, you know. And like I said, not everyone is going to be able to, and they're not always easy to accomplish. But whatever it is you need to do is what you need to do. and try it, see what happens. So Gnomes is here, says, I moved an old light from one room to mine. Now it feels more open, positive, less energy, less negative and oppressive. The light is much brighter. Any ideas of maybe why? Well, that could be the nature of the light. The new LED lights, you can get like natural sunlight kind of lights, and they make you feel better when you turn them on. And so it could mean that you need more sunlight. Maybe that's a clue. So Mindy says to Ryder, I grew up on a cattle farm, literally grew up on them. I thought I was drawn to them as an animal, but found in adulthood that it is simply their amazing energy. They have huge energy fields. That would be horses, I'm assuming. Miranda says, hello, I love your shirt. Thank you. It's silk. I picked it up at Goodwill. Ryder says, lovely phoenix necklace. Thank you. Miranda says, I'd love to hear your opinion on gurus. Okay, so gurus is another one of those subjects. I mean, if you can find someone who's actually in the idea of the guru that we went to, the open-eyed meditation, is to experience someone who is existing almost all the time in that altered state. And by being near their energy and trying to emulate their energy, it can help boost your movement upwards, I guess, in your spiritual evolution and open you up. There's a lot of them out there that are not really enlightened, and I'd say that the guy up in Portland is the first person I've ever met personally in this life that I would consider enlightened, just because of the nature of his energy. And we're not there on a permanent basis. We ended up getting the Shakti pot, which was one of the reasons why Ian wanted to go, and I was kind of astonished that he gave both of us the Shakti pot, which is a process of sort of charging the Kundalini energy up and removing some of those blockages and letting it rise up the spine so that the student can experience it. So a lot is going to depend upon where you are in the world and who you meet. So yeah. I might have something specific about specific ones if I had met them, that kind of thing. So
well, I would say you have to remember that anything relating to guru worship, you have to remember is the idea of worshiping the guru principle or the primordial guru, not the person, so you don't get the person's personality confused with the primordial guru, or whatever you want to call it, the archetype of gurus, which is what the person is supposed to contact during the guru worship.
And when Ian says the word worship, he doesn't mean the kind of worship that a Christian would mean for worshiping their God or their saints. It's the similar word, but it's a different thing.
Generally, in case of the gurus, you're just trying to bring in their energy, influence yours in a positive fashion.
Right. So Taylor says, what is the rule of 3? My birthday is March 3rd, so thought that was funny. Well, the rule of 3 is from Wicca, and basically it's the idea that anything you put out comes back to you threefold, and it's sort of a good method to use. I used it a lot in the beginning, just to think about the fact that, excuse me, if you are a competent magical worker, then you're more potentially responsible for your own actions because you're coming from a more conscious platform. And so that's how I took it, is that an ordinary person doing something that I was doing wouldn't have as much personal responsibility for the results of their actions as I would. So it's a way to help you think about the consequences of what you're doing as a magic user. And some people don't believe in it, and they figure if they don't believe in it, it's not true. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But being a responsible person and trying to make your environment better seems to be a good path to take. So you can take that for what it is. It's not a law it's not like one of the commandments in Christianity.
Right, I agree. It does make you more responsible, but it also kind of happens automatically as you get more practice and concentration and focused and stuff. Your things tend to manifest more, and that means any bad thought forms you have will manifest out too. So you need that improvement of your nature to be able to continue improving in magical and mystical abilities and things also, because it'll hinder you if you don't.
Okay, so Charity says hello. We all say hi, Charity. Cassie says, I've been trying to get through to him calmly, so this is about the abusive language, but lately it's been getting worse and worse. I'm kind of scared that he's going to actively harm me or my LGBT friends, and I just want to protect them. Well, okay, so self-protection kind of stuff. Well, if he's getting like that, then I'd say it's time to put him in a mirrored box and let karma take care of him. That's, to me, the best of all of those things. Build yourself a mirrored box, make a poppet, name it him, Between the Worlds. Get as many of your friends together that are comfortable with doing this as you can, or just do it yourself. Write his name on the poppet. Write out all of the things that he's done and is doing and what you're afraid of on a piece of paper. Then read it aloud before you put him in the box and ask the beings to view him. This is like to sort of quicken the natural karma that he should be getting, and it will help. That's like to sort of get him off the table as quickly as possible, but it can take a while. And when you're done with that, go bury it somewhere. Not in your yard. You want to bury it away from where people might dig it up. And it doesn't have to be big mirrors, and it doesn't even have to be actual mirrors. You can use a box, a cardboard box. You can line it with Reynolds wrap with the shiny side in, and that can be enough for a mirror. You visualize that. Stuff the poppet with like sage and rosemary or something like that. If you have anything personal from him, you can put that in the poppet or on the poppet or what have you. You can get a picture of him. You can put his picture on the face of the poppet, which helps to identify him to the other side, and get that in there. And then for yourself, you want to do some self-protection kind of spell work for your own personal energy shield. Every time you're around him, turn it into a mirror facing him so that anything he says or does bounces right back at him. But be sensible, try to stay away from him as much as possible. And definitely go to the police. Go to the authorities. If you feel that he may harm you in person, you need to let them know that, because you don't want to become a chant. It's not okay. We don't want that to happen. Trying to think of other stuff, because you can wear some stones to try and help. You can try to arrange your schedule as much around him not being there as possible. Make sure you're not alone with him. Like, again, you need to meet with the group of people that he's harassing and come up with some ideas of things that you can do in real life and in the real world aside from magic in order to protect yourself and make sure that you're safe. Generally speaking, those kind of people are afraid of larger groups, and they like to single people out that they consider weak and vulnerable, and that way they feel more powerful. Part of this is a power struggle, where he's trying to put your power down, his power up, by comparing you to him and how much better he is than you, or some stupid thing like that, because people are so inane, some of them. Anyway, so that would be something to do. If you go into the hoodoo stuff, you can check out the book 5,000 Spells that we used for the Breaking the Curse spells, and I mentioned the name of the book and the author there, and there's some stuff in there that you can do. Depends on your path and how you feel about that. But there's some powders that you can make that you can, if you can get them sprinkled in, like a footstep or something like that, it's supposed to make them have to leave. So, but I'm not familiar with that in particular, because those aren't the ones I tend to use.
But you did do the salt and pepper one thing for the fence and that.
Yeah, that actually worked really well doing the basic salt and pepper thing, but she's going into he or she is going into a public environment in a school setting, so I don't think that that would work. Although you could throw salt at him over and over again every time he starts talking to you. I don't know, it might freak him out. You can't, it's hard to predict how some of those kind of people will respond to things, so stay on alert for sure whenever he's around. I'm sure you are, and talk to somebody about it. Okay, so Mindy says, absolutely, Ryder, my Mustang, had been my greatest healer and teacher. So they're Mindy and Ryder are talking about their horse experiences. Trinity says, great advice. Mindy says, I recently had a new spirit guide enter my life, a mother figure from this life who passed on. Well, that's interesting. Amar says, hello, Siofra, Ian, and all the beautiful people here. Hi, Amar. We haven't seen you in a bit. Mindy says, does this mean that I will lose an older one? Do they replace one another, or do we gather them as we progress in life? Well, that is going to depend. If the one you've had for a while has decided that its job, what it can do for you, is done, it may leave or it can stay. It's not you only have one kind of thing and that's it for the rest of your life. So it'll be up to them and what they think is best for you, if they're actual spirit guides. So Ryder says, hello, Amar. Destiny Giron says, hi, Destiny. Ryder says, at Destiny, hello. Miranda says, if a guru or spiritual teacher comes out as having done immoral things, are their teachings still valid? In a word, probably not. Because the ones that have come out as having done immoral things, the only reason they were doing the teachings that they were to try and subjugate their students so that they could do the immoral thing. Usually the immoral thing they've done is on their students, so that means ignore everything they've ever said and look for someone who has a better shtick, because if you have to think about the fact that if that's where they're coming from and if that's what they think they do, that means they're not enlightened. That seems pretty clear right off the bat. So if they're not enlightened, anything they say that they know about enlightenment is a lie, because they're not enlightened. Sort of like a circular thing there.
That's kind of the trick, to recognize an enlightened being also, and I don't think there's any good method for sure other than your own awareness and instincts.
I mean, immoral, violent acts against other people is a dead giveaway that they are not enlightened people. And that this is a fakery that they have cooked up in order to feed their ego, feed their wallet, feed their prurient sexual interests, whatever, and to feel powerful at the expense of other people. A really enlightened person isn't looking for power, because you don't need power if you're enlightened. It's not a part of the equation.
It's like something you're after.
Right. It's not what your focus is, because at least my understanding of an enlightened person is to become more aware of who you are and your place in the universe, and realize that everyone has a different place in the universe. The more enlightened a person is, the less prejudiced they're going to be. They're going to realize that those things don't matter, that the differences that we see between each other are not real in any sense of the word. They just are. They just appear to be different, but that doesn't mean at the core that we are not all spirit. So, so think about that if you have to ask the question. I mean, if they cheated on their taxes, that's not necessarily a write-off, because that's but immoral, definitely a write-off. So we know Osho is one of those. Ignore completely. Everything he has ever said has been to give people an opportunity to give up their personal will and their personal power, and this path is all about your own personal power and having it, not giving it away to someone else to have them tell you what to do. And I stress that a lot because it's important. I'm not a guru. So Cassie says, the rule of three has always been very important to me, especially because my manifestations have always been very powerful. I just wish I would know how to control it better. Well, it's a learning process. Everything we do is a learning process. Violet says, I have my new routine underway. I just plugged in Siofra for next Sunday, and from now on, I will be this way so I never forget. Awesome. Good for you. You are such a gift, you and Ian, sharing your wisdom. Such a gift. Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate the fact that we're being helpful. We try. Cassie says, because my manifestations are so strong that I'm scared that I will do more harm than good. Well, if you focus your manifestations on trying to become a better version of yourself, then you probably can't go wrong. So think, if you're worried about something you're doing, look at what it is and decide whether it meets that criteria or not, or whether it's you trying to control your environment and control the world to the point where the world will not comply and then things will backlash. So, Morgan Bildula, hi Siofra, I stumbled upon your channel and I really appreciate what you share. I was wondering if you believe in changelings and if you think they exist or common in today's world. We've only seen a changeling. Let's see. That is when the fairies steal a child. You're going to have to make me know if that's the case or what you're talking about, because then I can answer the question. Oh, and I'm from Ireland. That probably is the question then. Concrete Angel says, this is great advice. Frankie Gore says, do you garden? Are you planting any seeds this spring, physically or spiritually? Yes, I have a garden. I have flower gardens. I have a vegetable garden that we started last year. We will be planting, and we have to wait for the weather to be more conducive to that. And I always am planting spiritual seeds. It's kind of just, who I am. Karmic Justice says, can you recommend a spell to undo black magic spells? Okay, well, I would recommend looking at the one I did on breaking spells and curses, and then realize that those things are not necessarily accurate, because we found out later. Read the comments on that video, because some of them leave out rather important pieces of information.
Do we have, if there is such a thing, do we have any idea on what genre it might be, or what religion, or any details? Just
right, because finding out who did it, if you know who did it and what their path is, can help you figure it out. We've tried various things because of stuff that's happened to us. We've buried Ian's puppet and had a funeral for him so that the perpetrator would think he was dead, which is one of the recommended methods. So watch that video because I go over some of that stuff. Cassie says, thank you so much. I've never heard of the mirror box before. That was extremely helpful. If he actually tries something physical, I will definitely go to the authorities. Well, I still think you should go to the authorities in your school and let them know that you're being harassed. Because, they're supposed to know, and then it turns out they don't pay attention to you, and they don't care, and they don't do anything about it. You'll actually have it on record should something happen. And that's what they're supposed to be there for, so make them do their job. Writer says that Cassie, I understand from a different situation, always good to feel the fear and do it anyway. You can always fix anything gone wrong or any hurt, just fearing hurting someone who you are. Shows who you are. Yeah, I agree with that, because a person who's unethical will never question their actions. And, I've often worried that I'm being judgmental or critical or something, and, I'm looking at myself to see, and then someone points it out. If you were being like that, you wouldn't be looking at yourself. There'd be no self-reflection. So it says something about us. Marinda says, how can you tell if you are channeling a spirit as opposed to the ego mind making things up, especially when your sense of identity isn't knocked out completely during the session? Okay, so I am a channeler. I did that a lot. And knowing who you are is number one. And I was not a trance medium, so I was always aware of what was going on. And for me, it was the feeling of the energy, the presence that I channeled, had a very specific energy signature. She was always the one who came. I always was in charge of whether I wanted to let her in or not. She came in on the left side of my brain. I could feel the tingling. I moved myself over inside of my head and then let the energy shift and sat in her energy, and then other people could feel her. So the presence was vivid enough that other people in the room could tell that it wasn't me anymore. And we also had some physical manifestations take place during one of our sessions where there was a fair number of people there. Someone's Angora sweater or mohair sweater melted into the chair she was sitting on, which was not something that had recently been varnished. It was an older varnish and it stuck inside, and someone else had a key completely bend in their pocket. So, you look at the information that's coming through, whether it's useful, whether it's valid, whether it's different than what you currently know. And then, like I said, know who you are. And, that's really the only way you can tell that I can think of. All right. Ryder says, hello to Morgan. So Concrete Angel says, do people that follow false religions, for better of lack of words, become lost in the afterlife? Well, when you die, you go where you expect to go, what your subconscious is expecting to happen. So whatever your spiritual beliefs or your religion is, that's where you'll end up. I remember different lifetimes, my after-death experience when I was raised a Christian and believed in Christianity, and I saw all the things that I did in my life and decided that I deserved to go to hell, and I found myself in hell until I couldn't remember why I was there anymore, and then I was not there. And so that's where that belief comes from my personal experience. And most of the stuff I talk about is because I've experienced it myself, rather than just read about it in a book. So Tia says, are there any spells, charms to stop self-hate or magnify self-love? Well, there's a lot of things you can do for yourself. Taking care of yourself, getting therapy is important. Figuring out what the core is and then dealing with the core issue. Self-love stuff is first and foremost to give you the opportunity to get rid of the voices that other people and experiences have planted in your head and made you believe is true. So I used to think that I was a horrible disease and I was truly evil and that I infected other people and that just being around me would make them become violent. And somehow it was something that was wrong with me. That was because of the torture and abuse that I suffered as a child. And usually that feeling of like self-hatred comes from a real life experience and the way people treated you when you were young, or at least a group of people have treated you that way. And so healing that is the path to self-love, that ability to see it for what it is and recognize that core program that you have, and then start creating opportunities to challenge that assumption. The assumptions that you have about reality are only assumptions because you haven't seen the evidence for the other side. So you have to allow that to come forward.
Not only that, but if you think about self-hate and stuff, it's not what you hate is previous actions you've taken or things you've did or the way you've acted. So that implies that it's all tied to the past. So that anything tied to your past like that, as Siofra was saying, let it be. You need to become desensitized to it one way or another. But drop the past. Think about now. Now you're not that person, so there's no self-recriminations. Do no good for anybody. You need to decide not to do that behavior again, and then go on without self-recriminations and things which are all tied to the past.
Okay.
That wasn't too much on the subject.
No. Sort of a different angle. So Mirinda says, to me, letting others worship you as a higher being, like taking their money and building a cult-like following, is immoral. So it wasn't like murder, but it didn't feel pure. Well, I mean, taking advantage of people financially
Yeah,
is
and
definitely immoral.
for example, the real gurus have built up a following without doing so themselves, like Swami Nityananda in the past of Ganesh Puri, since there's been a bunch of Nityanandas. He started, followers followed him and built up ashrams and stuff around him, which he did not encourage people. And in fact, he generally didn't teach people. He would let them be around him and absorb his energy. But yeah, there was none of that. And when you find somebody enlightened, it's like that. They don't need to make themselves a following. It happens by itself if they're the real deal. And yeah, that's not.
Well, she added more.
Yeah,
She said, but also this specific guru isn't asking people to worship them. Seekers kind of just do it by themselves. I'm not sure where the line is.
Well, yeah, because you're not supposed to be worshiping the guru or his aspiration. Ideally, really, you're worshiping that guru principle. So in practice, his personality might be a little imperfect. The guru principle is never imperfect, so you shouldn't think of it that way, but you have to discern from people that are, things that might be a little bit different from the ones who really are out there to just gather followers and things, or have like 36 Rolls Royces.
And I agree with Ryder. She says, if it doesn't feel right to you, listen to yourself. Because your instincts are the most important thing that you have. So Gnomes is here said, is there a specific way to behave in the presence of the Fae? Okay, well, what I would say would be respectful, be courteous, not that they are easily offended like a lot of people seem to think that they are, but it's just good manners. And be open-minded, see what they have to say if they're interested in you. That says something all in itself. So Taylor says, are there examples of magic involved in art that you know of? Well, there are some people that channel art and music and all sorts of other stuff, and art is certainly a transformative kind of thing.
And like the Japanese use art for their own self-development for meditational things, especially flower arranging and painting.
Right. I mean, it gets you it gets you involved in the other part of your brain, the non-logical part of your brain. Creativity helps to short circuit the ego logic type stuff, rational thinking. And that is more of a path to the younger self, and the younger self is the one that knows about magic and believes in magic. So anything that gets you into that space is a magical practice. I have some art from a person I helped with a haunted bed, and he would meditate before he did his art. So doing his art was a form of meditation, and Ian is starting to get into that frame of mind with his paintings as well. And so, it's about you, the individual. Amar says to well said at Ryder for listening to yourself. And Marcus says, was there one defining thing that got you into this? Hi, from London. I was born. I'm sorry. I'm one of those weird people. In fact, I talked to my mom yesterday, and she's 91, and I was telling her about the channel and what's going on with it. And when I asked the question about whether other people saw through their eyelids, and I had this very pregnant silence on the other end, I continually challenge my mother's reality. So, I'm sorry, I'm not a good example of how anyone got into this. I kind of was just born the way I am and then had to try and figure out where I fit.
Yeah.
And then finally I did.
I didn't really have a defining moment either. It just kind of happened gradually for me.
So Morgan says, yes, like when children are replaced with Fey children to grow up in a home that perhaps isn't prepared for a child. That's the changeling. It's a big part of the lore here, as I'm sure you know, but I've not heard very much about changelings in contemporary practices, experiences. I think that that was something that the church planted. In fact, I read an article just the other day where they said that leprechauns was something that St. Patrick created by changing the great god Lu into this frail kind of stooped over person that then evolved into the leprechaun. So I'm not sure that we can actually trust most of those stories, because just about all of them are meant to terrorize us and make us afraid of things that are different, and a way to take the pagans of Ireland and push them into the church for safety and comfort and everything else. And he did a huge disservice to all of us by changing and amplifying and what all those stories and mixing the Irish paganism in so completely with the Irish Catholicism and then Protestantism. Of course, he was the Catholic part of it in the beginning. That's all that there was. So I don't think that the Fae are that interested in human children and putting them into their children into human homes. I really haven't encountered anything like that. I do believe there's the chance that from the stories in the past that the Fae and humans used to intermingle when the worlds were closer, energetically speaking, and that some people have their blood in them. And I might be one of those because of where my family in Ireland is from. We're from Sligo County, and my ancestors were raised at the base of Knocknashee, so one of the 7 sacred hills of Ireland. And I know historically that the regular people of Ireland did not want to be anywhere near those places because of the fear that they had for the Fae and what they might do in the middle of the night. So, you know, I'm trying to interact with them now in the moment, in current reality, and I've met some of the Sidhe, and you know, I've had a number of them, of the other kinds of Fae. Several of the gnome types and some other varieties have come into my room and introduced themselves or shown themselves to me, and are trying to get me used to the notion of seeing their faces, I think. Because when the 3 gnomes showed up next to my bed, that was the thing. They were looking at me, and they all had very distinctive faces, similarities in the, like, you know, the bulbous kind of nose and the wrinkles and the hair everywhere and the beards and stuff like that, but very distinctive. They did not look identical at all. And they kept asking me, "Can you see my face?" And I said, "Yes, I can see your face." And I said, "What's your name?" And then they didn't answer and they went away. So I'm trying to be open-minded about that and, you know, find out more about them from them. It's sort of like, how many things have we been told are true that turn out not to be true? Like the world is flat, we're the center of the universe, you know, just some basic things like that, that there are no such things as germs, you know, whatever. And
yeah, they thought that was a stupid idea.
They really did. They thought that was dumb. There was no microscopic life forms either. And, you know, so we have to remember that just because a story has been written down in a book and it's old doesn't mean it's accurate. So no personal experience with it.
As far as magical books, you have to, or magical stories and things, you have to watch out for people. There may be a grain of truth in some of them that they may have been totally misinterpreted by the person who wrote them down or who recorded it too.
So Cassie had to leave. She said, "I will have to go now. Thank you so much for your advice, and I hope everyone has a wonderful night day. I hope you do too, and stay safe." Marisol Losada says, "Hi, Siofra," and then a nice big heart. "Hi, how are you?" Writer said, "Bye to Cassie." Amar said, "At Cassie, happiness and joy." Emotive gave her a heart. Marinda says, "I've been trying to figure out if I've experienced Kundalini reaching my crown chakra. It happened at like 12 and hasn't happened since, which I'm fine with. I'm just curious. My experience wasn't unpleasant but powerful. It was like my skin didn't exist and I was everywhere and everything, but I also didn't feel like I existed. Is this Kundalini?"
Kind of what it sounds like. Maybe.
It sounds like a definite opening up of the crown chakra, which is the divine connection with the divine. From there, that's where you would end up in, would be an experience like the Akasha. So it does sound like that. So yay. Ryder said, great advice, Ian. Clap, clap, clap.
Thank you.
Tia says, yes, thank you guys. Ian hit the mark. I spend most of my time dwelling on the past. All right. Ryder says, at Marinda, sounds like an omnipresent experience. Fantastic. Yes. Marinda says, when it happened, I was at peace. Afterwards, my kid brain was like, maybe I shouldn't do that. but I also want to. Well, yeah, I mean, it can be kind of startling to suddenly exist in a completely different state of reality that you're not familiar with. Yeah. Concrete Angel says, off topic, but what made you want to dye your hair? You look ethereal. I love the outfit as well. I don't know. I just like the idea of the fact that we can have any color hair we want to now. And it was Killjoys, I think. No, it wasn't Killjoys. It was the other science fiction show that was on at the same time that had a young character that had the dark green highlights in her hair. They canceled Dark Matter. That's what it was. Yeah, I was watching the show Dark Matter, and one of their characters had, these wonderful dark green highlights in her brown hair. And I just thought, that looks so cool. I have some friends who have purple hair, and although purple is my favorite color, I kind of went with the green, and it changes as, at this point it's time for me to re-dye it again. But I like how it doesn't matter how long I've had it, it always looks interesting, and it does have that aqua kind of green look to it because of my silver hair. And definitely the water and me are friends. So Marisol says, was wondering what the sylph that you saw looked like. Well, I didn't see the sylph. That was the air spirit.
I just got an impression.
Right. I felt her. And they're kind of hard to describe because they're air. It's like...
You sense something that's not yourself and it's not quite the environment you're looking at.
Right, not the trees and the grass and the leaves on the ground and whatever else is usually in the forest that we sense on a regular basis. It's different, but it's just like feeling her made me feel light, like floaty light, but not like spacey light. It's kind of...
And I could sense that there was something there, but I couldn't tell what at all. I had no idea what it was, just that there was something there.
And then I felt it at exactly the same spot that he had felt it, which confirmed that something was there, but I knew what it was. And I'm not always sure how I know what these things are, but I do. I guess that's the omniscience, or...
Well, there's clear knowledge, whatever that's called.
Right. Whatever that's called. I have that sometimes. I mean, just, I'll look at something and all of a sudden the whole, book of something that about it pops into my head. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know what to do with that. And this is what you do. It's like, bam, there you go. And I have that if I'm in a crisis. If I'm in a crisis, I can access information I don't know. Like when we were in that cave, we were caving and we went to this cave in the Sierras called Crystal Stanislaus. Was it Stanislaus?
I think so.
Crystal Stanislaus Cave was the Stanislaus River below us. And we were going to go out of the cave. We were going back. And we had to climb up sort of like a chimney type of thing. And Ian just climbed up it because he's got longer legs and longer arms and just went boom, 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 boom like that without a problem. And it was, a good 10 feet or so,
Like that, yeah.
about that. And I'm looking at it and trying to figure out how I'm going to get up there. And I'm thinking it's narrow enough that I can do one of those chimney things where you put your back against one wall and your feet against the other and walk yourself up. So I'm walking myself up, and then suddenly I get to a wider part of this tube, and my legs are straight. And I can't walk up. And I also can't walk down because my legs are straight. I have no leverage at all. And so I'm sitting there, and I've not done mountain climbing. I've not taken any climbing classes or anything like that. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking the problem through. It's like, I've got to do something or I'm going to fall. And I'd be falling about halfway down onto some nice hard rocks below.
We didn't expect anything like that, so we didn't have a rope.
So I'm sitting there thinking, what do I need to do? And suddenly it came to me. I need to bend a knee. I need to bend a leg so that I can get some leverage. And so I had to let go of my left leg and my left arm because my boot was too heavy for me to move my foot and grab a hold of my foot and put it on the wall behind me. And I shoved my foot up as close to my butt cheek as I could possibly get. And by then my body is shaking because I'm using pressure to keep from falling. And I can't plan anything at this point. I have one shot of getting out of there unharmed, and the only thing I can do is push upward as hard as I can to the opposite wall and hope that I can find something to hold on to. And so I did, and I did. I found something to hold on to, and I climbed out of there. I don't know if I had external help or not, but certainly what I needed to know was there in the moment, and that happens to me a fair amount. It's like if there's a crisis situation and I need to know how to do something I don't usually do, it'll just pop in, whether it's magical or not. So, let's see. All right, gotta go back up a little bit. So David Zunker says, a link may not be allowed, but Erwin Saunders on here posts believable videos of Fey beings. Okay, maybe we can look that up at some point. Violet says, have you done an experimentation with the watchtowers lately? As I remember you were making art of the towers before.
No, it's my fault.
We haven't gotten any farther yet, and yes, it is his fault, so we're gonna blame him. So Concrete Angel says, the other day I woke up and saw a black inky web above my bed. It was moving. It looked like a symbiote. This is the second time I've seen it. I cleansed by burning rosemary, but not sure what it's about. I can only see it when I first wake up, and it goes away when I turn on the light. Well, that makes sense that it would go away when you turn on the light. And if you don't like it, what you're doing sounds like a good idea, but you might want to try doing an active circle around your bed at night and keeping a piece of selenite under your pillow. And then if you have a piece of selenite there, you can just grab the selenite and go like that at it, and if it's negative, it'll just dissipate because they don't like it. So I would recommend trying that. And then if it doesn't go away, it may not be negative just because it's black. I mean, I created a web in my bedroom, but mine is blue, and it's blue-white light. And I did that because someone was sending some kind of a wolf-like thing at me to attack me. He wanted to get us to do something for him. He came to our house. He was crazy. He started going nuts after he left and yelling and profanities on my voicemail. And I'm like, we don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. And my suspicion is he did that, but I don't know for sure who it was. And so, it would come, the few times it came, growling with teeth bared and right at me. And then I would grab it and throw it back. And then I thought, well, maybe I should try and catch it so I can find out for sure who's sending it. So one night after I did my full circle, because I do above and below as well as around my bed, so sort of like a sphere, I decided to make a web on the astral plane to catch it, so that if it came again, it would get stuck, and then I could look at it and do something with it. Of course, I forgot. And then the next time it came, I just instinctively threw it back. It was weaker each time. But then one night after I'd done this and nothing had happened for a long time, I was closing my eyes and looking at my energy field, and all of a sudden I saw this blue light web drawing itself above my head. I'm like, what the heck is that? And it took me about a week to remember that it was mine and I had done it. So, yeah. you never know. It's kind of entertaining.
Well, it is. It's kind of a reaffirmation that you've done something that leaves some kind of a lasting impression there.
True, because I had consciously forgotten it, and yet it was still there. So that means that it has existence on the other planes, which is what our premise is.
And that's one of the ways you can tell how well a charge builds up. If you keep working on something, you'll realize sooner or later it gets easier and easier to do, and the easier it gets is because you're getting more of that on the other planes that stays.
True enough. Okay, so Charity says, I love your channel, very wisdom-filled, interesting, and mystical. Thank you, Charity. We always love to have people who enjoy us. Miranda says, I have never been able to see spirits. I can only read thoughts, hear voices, and feel energies. I was wondering, is seeing something that I can be cultivated, or should I just focus on what's already been given?
I'd say it can be cultivated.
It can be definitely cultivated, because for me, seeing is a new thing. This kind of vivid seeing, and I see best with my eyes closed, which tells you something. So yeah, definitely you can cultivate it. And part of that is, one, retraining the brain that you're not wanting it to automatically dismiss information just because in the past it has been determined to be not valid information. You have to kind of...
Brain, yeah.
Yeah, the brain has got to, it's a slow process of getting the brain back on board to allow information to come in that's always been there, but you haven't been able to perceive because you've told the brain not to tell you about it. And so there's that piece. And then the other is getting past the fear factor, the sudden appearance of something that you don't expect, that has a strong presence, can be very startling, and the physical body sees something like that. It's kind of like, an animal instinct to run from the unknown because you don't know for sure what it might do. And so there's working with that piece as well. So Mindy says, Irwin also is the curator of the British Museum. Very interesting fellow. Is that the guy that does the... Whoops. No. No. Don't do that. I don't know how I did that, but I need it to stop. Here we go. No.
Oh. Right there.
Right there? Okay.
Right there.
Close that.
Yes.
I was trying to go down, and it came up with the other thing, and then did this weird left thing, and I'm like, no, I don't want that. Okay, Clarity gave a heart and a star. All right. Miranda says, I've been seeing a shadow in my mirror out of the corner of my eye, but when I look head on, it's not there. Yeah, that's normal. For it not to be there. We see these things on our peripheral vision easier in the beginning especially. And sometimes they actually move away because they don't want you to see them. Violet says, I still have not invoked or evoked because I have a fear of creating more chaos in my life accidentally. And I have enough without adding magic to it. Any thoughts on this? It has me a bit frozen. I would think I made the ice storms, for example, or the wildfires. Well, first of all, remember that you are not the all-powerful Oz. and the things that you do out of almost 7.5 billion people that are on the planet are not going to be the one thing that pushes the entire environment over into chaos and destroys the planet. Okay,
especially not on a beginner side.
Especially not on the beginner side. So do a reality check with yourself to start with, and realize that regardless of how good you might get at doing this stuff, it doesn't mean that you are the center of the entire collective universe, and anything that you do is going to affect the whole.
And also, generally, if you have good intentions, then that's how things are going to react anyway. I think there's a lot to be said for doing things with good intentions. And again, you can't be perfect, and things can always muck up one way or another. But I think if you do them with the right attitude, it helps a lot to get the right results.
Yeah, and depending on what you're doing, invoking and evoking, if you set it up so that you're in charge of the time frame and the space, and you make sure you back out of it as you came into it.
Well, that's the thing. You need to make sure and be balanced, especially after invocations. grounded afterwards.
Right, and you need to take care of yourself. If you're going to invoke an energy inside of you, which is what the invoking would be, if you're going to do a circle and evoke something outside of you, you just can like change that and let it go, you know? So it depends on what you're doing. Violet says, no Oz, ha ha ha. Amar said at Marinda, I personally think discernment and a strong intuition is a good foundation to the other ESP clair abilities. Looks can be deceiving, but what lies beneath matters most, in my opinion. I agree with that. Marisol says, thank you for answering my question. Is it possible to get dragged out of your body when you are sleeping? I have memories of something wanting me to go, but I was scared. I suppose that's a possibility. Sometimes you can have a spontaneous out-of-body experience when you're sleeping.
Yes, but pretty unlikely.
It depends on what's going on. I mean, if you watch the video where something tried to possess me, that was a very direct assault, and I was a teenager at the time, and it wasn't the astral, that was actually in my room kind of thing. But your connection to your body is stronger than, more powerful than, and primary to anything else that's out there, regardless of what it is. It has to have your permission to do it. Yeah, and if you don't feel comfortable going, don't go.
Yeah, one of the main problems is the fears. Don't let the fear of such things that it brings up in you have that much sway, but you also need to listen to it also.
Yeah, circumstantial.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Broad strokes, but circumstances, individual circumstances are important. If you don't feel ready yet for it, don't do it. If you don't feel comfortable with it, don't do it. That's okay. It'll come when it's ready, or, you know, in another life or whatever. So, Violet says, thank you. Speaking of circle, I create a bubble around me and then my whole house so I can move around freely. I cannot visualize a circle in this tiny space, but I can do the bubble. Thoughts? Well, a circle is part of a bubble.
Yeah,
it's a visualization. It doesn't have to be physical. You don't have to draw it on the ground. When I cast my circle around my bedroom is not that big, but I do the evoking pentagram for each direction, call in the element, cleanse my space, put the element in place, go around and do all four, and then I do above and below to create a sphere in my room, and then I take a hold of that sphere and I push it out, and it is a bubble. It's a sphere, and it goes out around the property, it goes to the edges of the property, it goes around Ian, goes around the house, it goes around everything, and it does what it does. It's like an insubstantial yet substantial thing.
Well, and a bubble is really what you're after, though the common term is circle. So, you know, really when you're making a circle, there's no reason it shouldn't be a bubble up top and bottom if you want.
Which is the fifth element. You've got the four elements around here, and then the fifth element is spirit, and spirit is all time and no time, so above and below. So it contains the whole thing.
When we use the term circle, it's a form of protection surrounding you or wherever you're making a circle. It doesn't necessarily imply that it's perfectly circular shaped. Spherical is good.
Okay. So, writer says to hi Jesse, hi Husam. Thank you guys, Marisol says. Violet says, that is so cool, your sphere. Hello. I think that... Nope, that's the wrong thing. Okay. So, Jesse says, hello, first time making the live. Do you make a circle and all to do anything spiritually related, like just a meditation or energy clearing? Okay.
Well, I normally have like a Where I do my meditations and stuff, I do it so often it kind of has a permanent circle built up around it, so you don't need to worry about it like on a daily basis once you've got it charged up enough.
And I do it every night around my bed to protect me when I'm sleeping, so any idiot that wants to try and get in is automatically rebuked by the guardians of the four quarters and the Garuda who likes to fly over my house, so. Violet says, I have seen an attachment on someone that would not go away unless it had hounds of hell on it. Okay, so I'm not sure exactly what the question is there. Mindy says that Violet, I do something very similar using a protective color with my bubble for protection. Yeah, certainly spheres, protection bubbles, or whatever is the right thing. Marisol says, thank you guys. Violet says, that is so cool, your sphere. Jessie says, hello. Concrete Angel says, my friend once told me cats can see into other dimensions, and I've heard animals can have a sense of spirituality. What is your take? Well, certainly they can see things that we can't. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They have different senses than we do. Their eyesight is in different wavelengths. Their hearing is in different sound, levels and stuff like that. And cats are very aware of their environment.
There are enough sacred animals like the cobras in India are considered sacred to the Shaivites.
Yeah. Yeah. They probably see more stuff than we do on a regular basis because, they don't question their reality like we do. They don't decide whether or not it's valid or not. It's just there. So their brains aren't triggered to not see that. Generally, cats don't care about spirits in particular unless they're doing something obnoxious to them, like tossing them around. Dogs often don't care for spirits because they see them as a potential threat to their family.
There's a difference the way they act in the mirror, too.
Right.
Because a cat generally won't react to a mirror.
Unless it's very, very young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a dog will.
Yeah.
Or can. TVs.
So, Marinda says, I've seen gurus who say that psychic abilities are hindrances to enlightenment because they cause more attachments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I don't know how I feel about it.
Well, okay, you have to consider first off that everybody talks on several different levels. But I would say that the level they're talking about is somebody who is oriented on the only thing being important is spiritual progress regardless of their life situation. Most of us have to face a normal life situation. Also, that's a kind of a deep question because there's also the idea of attachment and unattachment. Unattachment to something doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have it, that you don't enjoy it, but it doesn't destroy you or upset you even in particular when it's gone because you're not attached to it. You don't need to renunciation is aimed at this, but it's kind of a misunderstanding of getting rid of your attachments. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to get rid of things that you have, things you like, people you like, but you need to be unattached to personal feelings about them, I guess, especially about things like your car. So you still have your car, you could still enjoy it, driving it around, playing the sound system, whatever, but you're not attached to it in the sense that you do not feel like it's part of you. If something happens to it, it does not affect your ego or your person in that sense, but it doesn't mean you can't enjoy it and such. So in an ultimate sense, yes, they are correct, but practically speaking, most people aren't in the place to take that as the ultimate thing, unless they're literally a renunciate that has renounced all of society and out living in the forest or in a hermitage or something.
And the other thing, too, from a magical perspective, if the only reason you're getting into this path in the first place is to develop your psychic abilities, it's the wrong reason. The reason is to know yourself and to understand yourself, and by doing that, that happens on its own when you're ready.
Yeah. As for that specific aspect, it's the same kind of thing. They exhort people not to use their psychic abilities when they get them because they can become too much of a distraction from the path. But there's intrinsically nothing wrong with them or using them. You just need to maintain your independence from them so you don't end up depending on this psychic ability or that psychic ability. So you need to be unattached in that sense.
Okay, so now Violet says, part of my fear comes from the knowing things can attach that do not come off. Well, that's a belief system that you have that you need to fix. Because if you believe that you aren't strong enough to get rid of something that you don't want, then you won't be strong enough to get rid of something you don't want. And so, you know, that's something to work with, to understand that your home, your body, your spirit is in Violet. You cannot be attacked or attached by anything outside of yourself unless you allow it to have purchase with your fear, anxiety, or belief. So that's, you have to work on that in order to make that not true. I know it can't happen to me. Because I know it can't happen to me, it doesn't happen to me. If that helps.
That natural authority helps a lot.
Natural authority is definitely a thing. So, Abhijit Sharma says, how does one be consistent in anything? I don't get to talk to my friends these days. Could this be a reason for my low motivation levels? Well, that can happen to any of us. I mean, think about the Earth. We're right now in the northern hemisphere, we're getting into spring. In the southern hemisphere, we're getting into fall or autumn. And so the energy around us is constantly changing and shifting. For us here in the northern hemisphere, this is a time when things become more open, we're excited, we're getting out, we see things happening, the energy is there and available. When we're going towards winter, the energy is closing in on itself and starting to quiet down. So a life is like that as well. So sometimes we're like low key, low energy, low interest, and you can think of it as like the dark of the moon, or you can think of a winter kind of energy. So, you know, don't beat yourself up for it, and then find something that you enjoy doing. It doesn't have to be directly related to your path in particular in order to get you generated interest in doing more stuff. That's one of the things that I would say, because when we're like always doing that constant, like judging ourselves for our lack of ability or our lack of interest or our lack of...
Don't do that.
Yeah, it doesn't help at all. So... Okay, Violet says, the seriousness of it all is quite a responsibility. I can hold on to the good intentions thing you said. Thank you. Mirinda says, thank you for your answer. I understand what you mean. Like, I enjoy cake, but I don't need it. Nor do I identify as cake. Yeah. Well, actually, Ian had this great story that he read in one of his Zen books about the Zen master and his student who wandered into the palace.
Not becoming into
and he warned his student, he said, everything will be fine so long as you don't become anything. And you want to take it off?
Well, yeah, so the idea of the Zen stuff is don't become anything. In other words, well, that would take a whole lot of explanation. But basically, the student and the master, and they went and they slept in, like, the king's bed chambers or something, or his guest bed chambers or something like that. And he said, don't become anything. Well, they got found, and the master, they kept asking him who he was and what he was doing there, and he just played dumb and didn't say a thing. And so they threw him out as just being a crazy beggar. But the other guy, when he got caught, the student said, I'm the student of the great guru such and such. And so they gave him a good beating and said, what is a student of a guru doing coming in the royal whatever, you know, bed places, and gave him a good beating and threw him out. Well, master told him, well, told you not to become anything. You had to become a student while you were laying asleep there.
Yeah, so that's just a cute little...
Well, it is the right image of not identifying personally with these things, yes.
Yes. So Violet says, natural authority. I love that. I will hold on to that. Well, you need to claim that. Absolutely. Jesse says, do you have any future life memories? I love hearing your past life. I love to hear your past memories. Well, I look into the future a fair amount, and I actually, weirdly enough, have a future life that's in the past. So, sort of. Time is not like linear when it comes to lives, so yeah. But I know about it because I met someone from that future life that had it as a past life, and we did like a past life regression with her at the time, and that's how I remembered it. It's kind of hard to explain. But, you know, what we make of ourselves is what will happen, so. Lamar says, oh, Morinda says, I love that. I've actually been practicing that recently, being nobody, but like in a good way. Yeah. Amar says, I think Ian would be a great voice actor. Very colorful storytelling. Morinda says, dang, that time being non-linear. Yeah, I know. It's a mind messer. Concrete Angel says, do you have an opinion on Moldavite? There's a lot of discourse about it and shared experiences I've seen people say is not meant for humans. I have no idea. I was thinking of looking for some the other day so I could find out more about it, but I don't have any Moldavite, so no personal experience with it. Although I bought some tanzanite and I'm experimenting with it to see if it lowers my blood pressure, and so I wrapped it around my wrist and my upper number, and it dropped it by 10 points. But it didn't go down like it did that first time, so maybe that was a fluke. So I'm still experimenting with that to see how it affects my body. So Mirinda says, oh my God, I just saw a huge hawk or falcon getting attacked by ravens. I'm outside. It was so close. Apparently they are protecting their space. They will do that. Yes, smaller birds will go after hawks and stuff like that, which is one of the reasons why I was reading online. They were talking about feeding the crows to protect the smaller birds, and I realized that's what we're doing. We're feeding the crows, but it doesn't seem to stop the. We had a Cooper's hawk land on our fence a couple days ago. Just plop, was right there, just sitting around. Nobody chased it. So, who knows? But the crows are pretty good about protecting their tree space for sure. The hawk looked so annoyed. And she's also, Marisol says, wow, I've never heard that about Moldavite. Would you care to share any future stories? Well, no, not really. Not at the moment. Violet said, I had the exact same thing happen here. Oh my God, the crows were all over a white bird. It was probably a hawk, but it was light in color. Could be on osprey. Do you have any animals that live with you? Unfortunately, not at the moment. We've had cats, 4 cats all in all since we've gotten together. The first pair of cats, we had one of them for 16 years, and then the second pair of cats passed away, was it 2 years ago now? And we just haven't gotten another set of cats. So we're just, we're trying to focus on our space. So the moment we're entertaining the birds outside, we've got a bird feeder for the smaller birds, and we've got the peanuts that I feed the crows. And we have some deer that walk by every so often on our street, and we have that Cooper's hawk that comes by to visit from time to time. So we're glad that even though we're in an urban setting, we have sort of a rural environment. Every so often a wild turkey will walk by and freak out when I'm feeding the crows. So we're up on our hour-and-a-half mark here, so that's probably going to be our last question since it's an hour and 28 minutes. And we had to get rid of that guy that everyone was saying hello to because the things he was saying were not okay. I took care of that. And he got bored and left when his comments weren't getting any response. So everybody else here is always great, and I really like having your guys come and ask me questions. And if you have any questions to send in, that's always good too. Watch the other videos that we do and see if that generates questions or answers some of the questions you've had today.
Thank you for listening.
And we really appreciate the fact that you guys like to come and visit with us on a Sunday afternoon, our time. So thank you all. Love you guys. Jonathan popped in and said thank you. All right.